through diplomacy, Italy is born. Over 2,000 years after the collapse of the Roman Empire, Napoleon conquered the Italian peninsula in 1796. His troops introduced liberal ideas to the Italians. In 1815, Napoleon was defeated by a coalition of European superpowers, ending the French Empire's 12-year reign over Northern Europe. The Allied countries met at the Congress of Vienna to redistribute the regions of Europe that had previously been under French rule. The Italian peninsula became divided to look like this. Austria was given control over Lombardy and Venetia, these states, and had the right to intervene militarily in these states as well. Only Piedmont was independent from Austrian influence. Despite the dominion it was given over the peninsula, Austria wasn't able to destroy the liberal ideas that the French had brought with them. The most notable of these ideas was that the Italians should see themselves as a single people and dismiss all foreign intervention. These ideas, in tandem with economic instability and political conflict, stimulated the rise of pro-unification ideals amongst the Italian people. This was shown during the revolutions of 1848, when a series of liberal revolts were launched across the Italian peninsula. In Lombardy, citizens initially boycotted cigars and lottery tickets. However, this peaceful form of debate soon escalated into street fights with Austrian garrison members. These revolts incited the King of Piedmont to declare war against Austria. While the Piedmontese army initially pushed the Austrians back, the Austrians decisively vanquished them at Custoza, ending the war. It now became apparent that formidable allies were needed for any chance of freeing the peninsula from Austria. Incidentally, the Crimean War began in 1853 because of religious conflicts between Russia and the Allied powers of France, Britain, and the Ottoman Empire. So, after it was clear that the Allies would win, Piedmont joined them, as its prime minister, Count Cavour, wanted a seat at the peace negotiations which would let Piedmont establish diplomatic ties with the three global superpowers. Cavour hoped that one of them would help Piedmont in removing Austrian authority from the Italian peninsula. This desire materialized in the Plumber Agreement. The Plumber Agreement of July 21st, 1858, between the Prime Minister of Piedmont, Count Cavour, and the French Emperor Napoleon III, led to the military alliance, which had France aid Piedmont militarily in the case of an Austrian offensive in the Italian peninsula. The French's diplomatic promise, embodied in the Plumber Agreement, allowed Italy to obtain Austrian-occupied Lombardy and the United Provinces of Central Italy. The fulfilled covenant of the Plumber Agreement allowed Italy to come on the world stage and establish itself as a formidable European power.
Even before the agreement, Napoleon III had always dreamed of defeating Austria to humiliate her and glorify France before all of Europe, especially because he was still mad that Austria defeated his uncle, Napoleon I. Napoleon III wanted the Italian peninsula to be free from Austrian influence, but not to be politically reunified, because then France would have less control of it. Cavour was fully aware of Napoleon's objectives and wanted to serve them while fulfilling his own, which was to remove Austrian authority from as many Italians as possible. In return for France's military backing, Cavour promised Napoleon III Savoy and Nice, if Piedmont gained territory. Napoleon III also desired a marriage between his cousin and Princess Maria Clotilde of Piedmont. Despite the rumors in circulation of Napoleon III's cousin's bad character and the princess's exceedingly young age of 15, it was agreed that the two would be married to strengthen diplomatic ties between Piedmont and France. According to Cavour, proceeding without the marriage would have been an enormous political error. The two leaders also debated how the Italian peninsula would be split after the Austrians were defeated. Both leaders wanted to maximize their control over the peninsula, so that made reaching a resolution incredibly difficult. After much compromise, the two decided that the northernmost region would be given to Piedmont. This region would only consist of 1/3 of the peninsula, but included the agriculturally prosperous Po Valley. The other 2/3 of the peninsula would be governed by French rulers. Cavour believed that the dominion over the northern part would provide Piedmont with practically all economic and political control over the entire peninsula, as the Italian economy was agricultural. Napoleon III, on the other hand, was convinced that having French rulers govern over 2/3 of the peninsula would let France practice de facto political control over Piedmont's territory. While Cavour and Napoleon III devised a sophisticated plan on how they were to provoke Austria to declare war, when they met again 6 months later to establish a military alliance, Napoleon III said, "Actually, you make Austria declare war, however you can, and I'll help you afterwards. Oh, and I'm too lazy to put my Frenchmen inside your borders to govern Italians, so you can do whatever you want." So, 2 months later, Piedmont mobilized its army to try to provoke Austria. Sure enough, Austria then followed by mobilizing its army and demanding for Piedmont to demobilize theirs. Upon Piedmont's refusal to comply to the ultimatum, the Austrian army attacked 3 days later.
Napoleon III honored his diplomatic promise and joined Piedmont against Austria. Some more states also formed an alliance against Austria and became the United Provinces of Central Italy, thus widening the war. There were 2 main battles in the war, with both resulting in Austrian defeat. One of them, at Solferino, was so bloody that it inspired a witness to establish the International Red Cross Foundation, which protects victims around the world from conflicts between nations. While the joint Franco-Piedmontese army was pushing the Austrians back, Napoleon III made a diplomatic betrayal by signing an armistice with Austria without telling Cavour, who immediately resigned in protest. He decided to make peace with Austria because of the multitude of pro-unification insurrections that broke out in the peninsula. He realized that Italy's political unification was imminent, and therefore did not see any point of allowing Piedmont to become more powerful at the expense of his men. In the armistice, Austria surrendered Lombardy to France. France then gave Lombardy to Piedmont, who, despite feeling scammed by Napoleon III's decision, ceded Savoy and Nice to France, as promised. Following the armistice, Piedmont exploited the lack of Austrian presence in the peninsula and also annexed the United Provinces of Central Italy. 10 years later, in 1871, the Italian peninsula was finally unified under Victor Emmanuel II. Having one centralized government allowed for political unity and economic stability in the peninsula. Other countries soon began to recognize Italy and create diplomatic relations to secure Italy as a profitable trade partner. Looking back today, this unified Italy contributed to both world wars, has a flourishing economy ranked 13th in the world for GDP, and is constantly involved in debating in world politics through its contributions in the United Nations and European Union. One can tell that Italy's reunification was an arduous journey, but allowed it to come on the world stage and change the course of world history thereafter.